Hey, Paulina.
Good morning, Lars. Welcome to Germany.
I was just about to ask if you know where I'm sitting at the moment. I am in Germany. I'm in Berlin.
Yes, I'm so happy
And
for you. You're going to have so much fun.
yes, and I was walking around Berlin yesterday when we arrived about 4 or 5 p.m. or something like that. And the big difference, or one of the big difference between Copenhagen and Berlin, because they're very similar in so many ways. But one of the big differences is that you have trees, on every street. Like there's trees all over, like down the
Yeah, that's
streets and
true.
so on. And because we are as recording on the 17th of October, in the fall, you just see all these beautiful colors. The
Mm.
leaves are coming down, yellow, green, brown. It's so beautiful. I love it.
Oh, that's
I love it.
amazing. I mean, you're driving to Leipzig tomorrow, right? So if you do
Yes,
have
we
some
are.
time to walk around in Leipzig, um, because Leipzig is even greener than Berlin. Leipzig has
Okay.
so much parks and most streets also have the trees there, and all around Leipzig there is so much green. Since you're coming with the car, you could maybe stop at one of the lakes because we have 27 lakes around the city, so that's really really cool. So there's even more greenery. But I always thought that Copenhagen and Berlin are quite different, actually. So I'm super interested in the similarities that you see.
Yeah, I think it's just like a kind of the mentality of people, I think, and like the vibrant of the center and so
Ah, yeah,
on.
okay, yeah,
Because
that's
they
that's fair.
are very different. Because Berlin was pretty much rebuilt after Second World War, right? And
Yeah,
and Copenhagen have so many, like, hundreds of years of the buildings. I think the building I live in is like 150 years old or something like that. So in that way, it's very different. But I think it's just a vibe and the culture and people and how people behave and so on. I think that's very similar.
that's a very valid point. For me, the biggest difference is the cleanliness of the two cities.
Oh yes, Copenhagen is very clean. It's
Yeah,
extremely clean. That is a good point. I think I don't notice it as a Dane because it's just taken for
it's
granted, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Paulina, are we ready to roll for today's episode?
Yes.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cultures from Hell. This is the podcast where we explore the messy, fascinating, and deeply human side of workplace culture. I'm your host, Lars, and with me, as always, is Paulina, co host and co founder of the Culture Code Foundation. And today we are asking a deceptively simple question: what happens when nobody apologizes? Because in the absence of accountability, what fills the gap in resentment, or is resentment?
Hmm.
And Paulina, before we go into the deep end of the pool here, what's something you've recently seen at work or in your work with the Culture Code Foundation that made you think that could have used an apology?
Where do I start? Maybe first of all, I really, really enjoyed how you put it to say apology equals accountability, because that is so true. And I've never heard anybody put it like quite like that, and it's so succinct. It really nails it down. So thank you for that. And as to the story, I've had a few actually the last couple of weeks. Um, Maybe the most fragrant one was I worked with a company recently where a senior leader derailed an entire meeting by publicly throwing a junior under the bus. no one stepped in because obviously they didn't want to get involved in that situation. No one follow up as long as, to my recollection, nobody apologized. So I was in touch with the junior leader, and they told me that then nobody had to apologize to them. And you could really feel the temperature in the room drop by about 10 degrees. It was really weird. And I was there just to observe. I was not there in a moderating function. Otherwise, I would have stepped in. But since it wasn't my role in that specific meeting, I did talk to the senior manager afterwards. And it was really difficult for him to see why his behavior was harming the person that he threw under the bus, but the entire team out there. And I could really sense that the team was quite disengaged after that happened. So it's actually a good thing that we're talking about this, because I think I should really follow up on this one.
Damn.
I make sure that this goes into the right direction from here on in, because that's the thing, right? When there is no apology and no repair, people don't just get over this kind of thing or situation. They will file it under, okay, I guess that's how things are being done around here. I need to be aware of that. I need to guard myself. And I guess you're going to know what I'm going to say now. That's deadly for trust.
Yes, so much. And would you rather work in a culture that apologizes too much, or one that never does? I think I know the answer, but let's get it. Let's get it on recording.
I mean, to be fair, too much is fixable. A sorry overload is annoying and might also seem insincere, for sure, but it does signal some level of awareness and humility. But a culture where no one ever apologizes, that usually goes really, really deep within a culture. And that's where you get defensiveness, blame ping pong, and what I call emotional debt stacking. And the interest rate on that is just brutal.
Okay, so let's dig into today's topic. What really happens when apology and accountability go missing?
Mm-hmm. So when apologies vanish, then you will see two things starting to die: psychological safety and performance credibility. And I think we have mentioned before that a trust, which comes from feeling psychologically safe, is the cornerstone for any result and any performance you want to see in the team. So the link is, I think, pretty clear here. And emotionally, people in those kind of situations will go into self-protection mode. They will stop sharing ideas. They won't speak up when something's wrong. Because if no one owns mistakes, you better not be the one who makes one. And I want to be very clear here. It is not just about saying sorry. And I think we've discussed this just last week, right? The words at the end of the day mean nothing if they are not followed by actions. So the actual repair happens when you change your behavior that hurt people in the first place. If you don't do that, teams structurally become risk averse. Deadlines will slip, meetings will become political, and the energy will shift from how do we solve this to how do I not get blamed? And I've seen companies wasting days and weeks over the course of a year just documenting their own actions so that they could be untouchable.
And what are some signs that a company has and I'm going to do this in quotation marks, like has normalized non-apologies.
You'll often hear specific phrases. For example, let's just move on. We all make mistakes. Sorry if you felt that way, because it, right? That is
Yeah.
non-apology. The best non-apology ever. Sorry, it made you that you felt that this was inappropriate. That you felt that. Or also there was a miscommunication. All of those are definitely non-apologies because they avoid ownership and center the speaker's comfort, not the other person's experience. And over time, these microhertz pile up. I always have this picture of broken glass or broken china that nobody clears away. So it really piles up. And for example, in one company that I've worked with, years of this non apology policy from top leaders created a kind of cultural numbness because people couldn't be their selves anymore. And people even actually weren't angry anymore, just deeply unmotivated, like to the core. And that is actually worse because anger you can work with. Apathy or completely dissociation, that's cultural rot.
And I'm just gonna bring my girlfriend into the conversation again. We were sitting in the car yesterday on our way to Berlin, right?
Yeah.
And I can't remember because we started talking about narcissist in a relationship.
Oh, okay. Interesting story.
Oh yes. I would get some context to it just for people on the podcast. My girlfriend works with similar things, so it's often something we talk about, stuff like that. But a lot of the things that you're saying, like with the apologies, like let's just move on. We all make mistakes. Sorry if you felt that way, and so on. A lot of that is actually traits from a narcissist that they are able to do
Okay.
that, to
Turn it back
push
on
it
you.
towards you, yeah, turn it back
Mm,
on you, right? So it's just
interesting.
ringing so many bells in my head when you're saying that.
Interesting. Interesting.
Okay, so
Mhm.
let's say no one ever says I'm sorry. Can a team still rebuild trust?
Yes, I very much believe so, but only if the repair of the trust becomes a behavior. So you don't need the specific word, but you do need the action. That's what I said before, right? So take our after action reviews that we discuss so often here. If they are done right, they can be incredibly powerful. But here's the caveat. These and any kind of retrospective and any kind of action to building trust only work if the team has two conditions, which is a baseline trust and a shared norm that conflict always stays on the topic and never on the person. If you don't have those two, everything is going to be soup. And you don't see an apology, you will not be able to see any repair. But I have seen teams heal without apology because someone took timely action. For example, like removing a toxic blocker from the project or removing a brilliant jerk, how I call them. So when you clearly, openly, and visibly act in service of the team's health, that can speak much louder than any "I'm sorry."
Very good point there. And what does institutional repair look like compared to, in quotation mark, personal repair?
So personal repair clearly is one-on-one. It's a check-in, it's a truth-telling, a moment of empathy, and clear personal accountability for what has happened. Like, I'm going to change my behavior. I will ensure that this is never going to happen again. What would hurt you? Institutional repair, on the other hand, is about designing trust into your systems through after action reviews, through retrospectives, through feedback loops, through value based decision protocols, one of my favorites. And one company that I've worked with has standing monthly pulse meeting where teams openly share frictions without names, just situations or actions. They call it the compost pile. Every time a hurt or mistake is named, they actually discuss what can grow from it. So I love that picture, right? You throw the shit on a big pile and see what can happen, and that's actually a really beautiful way of doing institutional repair. Also, with like a little twinkle in the eye, you don't have to take it too seriously. Just laughter and humor, as long as it's not sarcastic or hurting anyone in return, can be an incredibly powerful repair tool if you can laugh together about things
And
that
now I
went
just
wrong.
have an image of a pile of shit in front of me, right? I love this. So, what are the main apology archetypes you have seen?
Woohoo! I love that question because that
Yes,
is
this is gonna be fun.
this is really going to be fun. It's a scarily accurate list, I would say. And do you know this trend on social media at the moment where you invent like insult names for your co-workers that are not super obvious? Like, for example, the lava lamp for the colleagues that are pretty but useless. So it's a thing. I at least get a lot of videos on this on social media at the moment.
I
And
think I can honestly say that my feed is completely different.
anyway, so what I've done when I've compiled this list, I try to do it a little bit like that. So I also invented fun names. So the first apology archetype is the ghost, because he disappears after conflict and pretends nothing has happened. And the root cause here that I usually see is conflict avoidance, shame, or complete self unawareness. And the impact is he definitely leaves others holding the emotional bag. And just, yeah, at least he pretends not to care. The rationalizer, that's one that you see a lot in business. He will justify everything instead of owning the harm that he's created. I was just being honest. Don't blame me, blame the truth. I think we've all been there. That is clearly about ego protection. And it makes the other person feel that their hurt has been unseen or overreactive. So that could also be one of those narcissistic traits that you talked about. Then we see the over apologizer who says sorry 5 times in a row but doesn't change anything. That usually comes from people pleasing and own insecurities. And obviously that erodes credibility over time. And I said that at the beginning, right? If you never change anything, then people will just not believe you anymore. We also see the blame shifter saying, well, you weren't clear. It's the system's fault, which clearly is a fear of accountability. I've actually seen something like that just the other day, where a team member told their manager off for doing something, and then the manager was like, yeah, but I only did this because you did that, and then they were like, yeah, but I only did that because you did that, and I was like, oh my god, I'm in a washing machine, a washing machine of blame. Oh,
Yeah.
well, and as you can imagine, that this kind of behavior breaks team trust, like if you drop a vase, right?
Of course.
It's and lastly, I would say we see the silent rebuilder, because they don't apologize, but actually start showing up differently. And that is action based atonement, which can be sometimes more effective than words because it is visible and consistent. However, I do appreciate the loud rebuilder who also can openly acknowledge, okay, I effed that up. That's not going to happen again. And then do the visible and consistent changed behavior. That's the ideal scenario.
Yeah.
Not just in work life, by the way.
Okay, so if someone out there like recognizes harm but can't express remorse, is there still a path to accountability?
Yes, like absolutely. Like I just said, right? They need to make visible amends. That could look like shifting how they give feedback. That could mean publicly backing the person they hurt or inviting accountability from others. Silence without change is neglect. Silence with change is a quiet kind of courage, but still needs acknowledgement to fully repair the trust.
And what are some repeatable practices teams can use? Let's get practical here. So yeah, is there like kind of any repeatable practices that they can implement out there?
Yes, and first of all, again, as I want to say, conflict is not something that you want to avoid. Constructive conflict, is actually something that you want to see in your team because it will produce better results. Because it's important that teams challenge their opinions, right? And that they that they are passionate about fighting for their ideas. You want to see that. And then you want everyone, obviously, to actively commit to the joint decision and then stick to it. But so conflict isn't a bad thing. Conflict only becomes difficult if people get hurt. So in those instances where people got hurt for whatever reason, I would definitely recommend a conflict reset 101, which can be a 20-minute check-in about 48 hours after tension, because you need to pause a little bit to let everyone cool off, and also to give you time to really prepare that conversation as a manager or leader. And what is super important in those meetings, stay focused on the relation. Don't talk about the topic itself. Talk about why the person felt hurt. Ask them what they need to move out of the situation, and don't take any, especially if you're a leader. Obviously, those conflict reset one-on-ones can also happen between peers, right? That is a different power balance in those kind of conversations. But generally speaking, try to focus only on one thing and on the person that got hurt. And yes, you can share your viewpoint, but be super, super careful not to devalidate what the other person has experienced, and to really own up to what you did. Even if you had no bad intentions whatsoever, your intentions don't mean anything if they had an impact on the other person. Then you can obviously say, okay, I didn't intend this, and not but, because never say but. And I'm still really, really sorry that it hurt your feelings. What can I do to fix this? What do you need from me to move on from here? right?
Mm-hmm.
Another ritual I really like is like a red button kind of thing, where any team member can call a repair timeout. So if you do have those conflict situations going on, this constructive conflict things, for example, and then somebody feels, "Ooh, no, this is coming to close, this is getting close," they can raise the hand or whatever signal you come up with and call this repair timeout. And then obviously follow through on that. And I would also suggest to do monthly trust reviews where you don't focus on goals, but really ask, okay, where are we as a team out of sync emotionally or on a trust level? And depending on the state of your team, so if you have high trust, like we had in our team at Solvmate, right, where we had a lot of high trust, that can be done in a team setting. But if you have lower trust, then you should try to do this one-on-one or in smaller circles, because people will feel freer to open up. So repair is often quiet. It's usually not a Slack announcement. It's a side conversation that says, for example, hey, what I said last week landed weird. I want to get back in sync, which is a super important signal telling you you matter to me. It matters to me that we're in sync, that we don't live in conflict with each other. And I think this is so important these days.
And again, back to back to like we were sitting in the car for like 6 hours yesterday, or we were
Yeah.
together 6 hours. So we had a lot of interesting conversations, and we actually touched on that one last topic about like if two people are in some kind of conflict, they haven't talked for, it could be 1 day, 1 week, 1 year, a decade, whatever, is that you don't know how the other person feels, right? So both these parties might want to reach out and get
Yeah.
back into sync again, right? So you
Yes.
need that olive branch. You need that one person that just hands out and say like, "Hey, let's get back in sync," or "Hey, should we sit down and have a conversation?" Right? And I would say in 9 out of 10 instances, I think the other person would just like, take a deep breath and say, "Oh, thank you for that person to reach out, so we can
Yeah.
actually sit down," because that initial reaching out is so hard for people, and
It
that goes
is.
for me.
And it usually is because we are under this collective illusion that the people don't want the same things as us.
Yeah.
I actually really highly recommend a podcast episode that I heard this week. It's from the Mel Robbins podcast, where she has a conversation with a Harvard scientist called Ted Rose, I think. I'll link it up in the show notes. And where they discuss this, he has done like the biggest study ever on what people want and need. And these days, especially, it feels like people want so different things. And the funny thing is, because social media shifts the the focus to the loudest voices in the room,
Hmm.
everybody thinks that those loudest voices stand for what broader society wants in life. And the fact is that 80% of content comes from 10% of the people. So what we hear and what we're confronted with all day long is basically the voice of the minority and not of the majority. And most people all across the world all want the same thing, which is safety and um, good things to happen to their friends and family, and to protect your friends and your family. Those and to just live peacefully together. That is what most people across the world want. And that applies. So really, really listen to this episode, because it gave me so much hope in humanity. It gave me so much hope back and optimism back. Um,
So
and
we all know who's the loudest voice in the room these days. I'm
the
not gonna
bullies.
say.
It's always the bullies. It has always been the bullies, and it
We
still
have a
are the
top.
bullies.
We have a top bully these days, right?
Ah, we have at least three top bullies, I would
Yeah.
say.
Okay. Okay. Good point. Okay, Paulina. So
But yeah, I just wanted to let me just close the loop, right? So if you think I'm alone with needing an apology or I'm alone with needing that repair in this situation, you're most likely wrong because just as you said, the likelihood that the other person is going to be really relieved because you're taking the first step is extremely high because the likelihood is really high that they actually want the exact same thing.
good one. And like you said, we're gonna link it up in the show notes.
Yes.
Please, everybody, go listen. I have to listen to it now.
Yeah, you can listen to it
Um,
on the drive to Leipzig.
oh yes, that could be very good actually. So what's one question every manager should ask after a conflict?
What do you need from me to be able to move forward? That question clearly turns conflict into co-creation.
That's a very good one. I'm gonna put a pin in that one. I need to say that more in my life. Okay, and what's one culture shift you love to see in how organizations handle apologies?
I'd love to see us all, not just in organizations, to stop treating apologies as an admission of failure. Real apologies, for me, are an incredibly strong signal of strength, not of weakness. And that is especially true when it comes from leaders because it tells me I am more committed to repairing than to being right.
And again, I'm just thinking about one person I would love to hear that that from. Okay, jokes aside, if you could, if you could design a ritual for repair that every team practiced, let's say once a month, what would that be?
A low stakes conflict jam, maybe. So, where everybody brings one small thing that bugged them that month and they practice it as a team to name that without any blame and receiving it without defensiveness. Oh, that would be. Oh, if ever imagine if every team would do that, how different our entire world would look like if people really learned in the workplace how to give feedback without blaming anybody and how to receive it without defensiveness. Oh, that could be such a superpower. Because the goal isn't to solve anything here, right? It is just to normalize naming microtensions before they can actually turn toxic. They could change. I'm dreaming now of a
Maybe
better world.
we should rename this podcast to the World Problem Solver podcast.
Oh, Jesus. How about we ask for the Nobel Peace Prize next year?
It sounds like these days that everybody can just reach out and say, "I deserve it," right?
Exactly.
That's gonna be us. Nobel Peace Prize for to the podcast Cultures from Hell. That would be great. Okay, Paulina, we're getting to the end of this
Yes.
recording, and I have to go out and enjoy Berlin. Beautiful, beautiful Berlin. So before we round up, can you just tell our listeners where can they go and follow your work? How can they reach out to you? And also, if they want to be on the podcast, how do they contact you or me for that matter?
Well, you can. The best way to reach out to me is LinkedIn. And you can also find me on Instagram. You can find the Culture Code Foundation on LinkedIn and on culturecodefoundation.com. And obviously, you can also read, if you want to be on the podcast, you can also reach out to Lars. We would love to have you on the show. And we will put all the social media handles and the podcast recommendation in the show notes.
Yes. And if you want to be on the podcast, you can either come on the podcast or we can tell your story anonymously.
Yes.
if that's what you're comfortable with. So please just reach out to us with any stories about company culture. We would love to share it on the podcast and tell those stories. I think actually that our next recording we're going to have a guest, right? Or am I mistaken?
Then the one after that. So in 2 weeks,
The one
we'll
after
have
that.
that guest.
Oh, yes, I'm looking forward to that one. Okay, so in this conversation, we explored what happens when no one says sorry and how growth, trust, and repair can still happen when accountability becomes a shared practice, not just a spoken word. Go follow Paulina on her Culture Code Foundation on the website. Go on LinkedIn, like you're saying, Paulina, you're sharing some great like tips and tricks and so on LinkedIn. So please go follow, and then we'll see everybody next week on the podcast. Thank you very
Yes.
much, Paulina.
Thank you, Lars, and enjoy Berlin.
Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.